we're going to talk about analytic epidemiology. So we have important terms, and by the way هذا الجداول وايد مفيدة يعني هذا this is أنا my suggestion إنه يعني in the end تسوون صفحة تصغرونهم. It's like those are important terms that you need to understand and focus on. يعني هذا الجداول وايد دائما حتى أنا مرات لما أكتب الامتحان أحط بس الجدول وأشوف ترم أوكي خليني أحط سؤال عن هالconcept. فهذا this is a very nice summary table to you guys. Analytic epidemiology احنا خلينا descriptive اللي هو cross sectional case report. هذا احنا هنتكلم عن analytic. Now the problem with analytic انه للحين بالكويت it's not easy to do these studies. اول شيء لانه we lack manpower. وثاني شيء عندنا clinical mentalities that are really make things complicated. So most likely لما تخرجون the easiest thing to do is actually descriptive cross sectional studies. However يعني I hope يعني to become the generation who enforce the analytic epidemiology, because very important part. Analytic epidemiology is where you can actually talk about causations. With descriptive, you cannot talk about causation. Very important. It's descriptive. Causation is a very complex concept and it cannot be inferred from descriptive epidemiology. So it is good for prevention of disease, quantitative evaluation of intervention, and safety and efficiency of drug and medical procedures, especially يعني إذا كان في clinical trial التجارب الكلينيكية. شنو عندنا major categories؟ عندنا اللي هو case control, cohort, ecologic and intervention studies. عندنا هني two categories of clinical. عندنا observation design, investigative, experimental design. So the clinical trial أو يسمونهم هم intervention studies are experiment. أنت you have control. Okay. Now, when you are, so the actual, now with observation study, you collect people and you study their characteristics, which you the risk of developing a disease, you follow them over time. Causation is, you cannot infer sufficient or direct cause. And you cannot do that with observation. That's a very important. And then you cannot control those people. You are just observe. You selected them, and then you observe them. Okay. However, with experiments, until you have control. Okay. Until you assign people the drug that to treat a disease, and you assign people a placebo, and then you compare the effect whether you see the drug works or not. This is direct causation. Okay. So that's a very important. We cannot infer indirect causation from observation study, but we can infer direct causation with experimental studies.
دكتور أحس إنه بالستدي راح أستخدم الاثنين، راح أستخدم observations وبعدين experiment لأن أنا راح أشوفهم أول بعدين أقرر أنا.
No, بس أنت you are assigning the cause. أنت you play with the cause. With observation study, أنت you see what is the cause. شنو risk factor that leads to a certain outcome. عرفت؟ فيو cannot أنت assign. You cannot assign disease or no disease. You cannot do that. It's not ethical. Okay. So that's why, because until you are doing the cause in terms of experiment. هذا just summary of epidemiological studies and then observation, ecologic case, cohort. Cohort can be prospective, retrospective, and then we have clinical trial and community intervention. The most important notable part, which is by the way كل واحدة راح نقصها درجة 5 درجات لأنها they did not vaccinate. Okay. Community interventions is vaccination campaigns. Okay, those are very important, and then we have clinical trials. Now, 7 factors that characterize study design. Okay, this is what we have to think about. Who manipulate the exposure factor? How many observations are made? What is the directionality of exposure? It is prospective or retrospective. Was it on the past or it's going to happen? What are the methods of data collection, which is different in case control, cohort, and ecologic? What is the timing of data collection? Is it prospective? Is it in the past or in the present? What is the unit of observation? And how available are the study subjects? So this is where you think This is where you think like what you need to put as a list when you think about designing a study for a specific disease or outcome. Major observation هنا راح اتكلم عنهم اللي هم ecologic, case control and cohort. Ecologic studies are conceptually easier. يعني هم it's a big study. Basically units of analysis are populations. يعني لما نتكلم عن ecological study لما انا اسوي مثلا على مستوى الخليج العربي على دول الخليج those are my study units على مستوى العالم. اوكي ممكن انا اسويها في اليونايتد ستيتس على مستوى الولايات ستيتس. فالunit of observation here is not individuals. There are population groups. Okay. Examples: nation states, census tract, countries. Maybe used when individual measurements are not available, but group level data are obtained. يعني هني used لما أنا ما عندي individual بس عندي statistics مالت groups. Okay, so that's where I combine them into ecological studies. Now, ecological comparison study involve an assessment of association between exposure rates and diseases during the same time period. Okay, so, and again, this is on group level. And then ecologic correlation and association between two variables, exposure and outcome measured at the group. So عندنا أول شيء عندنا between groups, and then when we have more information within the group, then we also start to measure it within a group. So between the group يسمونها ecological comparison, and then when it is auto ecological correlation معناتها within the group itself. Okay. Very simple. Now the problem is with ecological studies, a very major disadvantage is ecological fallacy. It is erroneous inference that may occur because association between observed between variable on an aggregated level does not necessarily represent or reflect the association that exists on individual level. واضحة الفكرة؟ يعني مرات أنا لما تكون unit of analysis مالتي countries ولا areas. However, يعني okay, so I measured the association, حسبت risk ratios, حسبت odds ratios, حسبت هذول. However, they may not represent the true association within the group itself. Okay, so that's all. Now, once ask me, what about when I do ecological correlation? When you have group level data, then you can avoid the fallacy. Okay. However, if you don't, then you might be subjected to that fallacy. Now the question is معناته شنو؟ اوكي يعني اذا انا ما عندي group I cannot do it. Yes, you can do it. في وايد الحين دراسات للحين قاعد تطلع سيد بروفيسور سيد الجنيد he published a lot on country level على مستوى العالم. Okay, ecological studies they have issues, but however you always, this is where you come the critique. الستدي احنا بالepidemiology نسويها. However ونطلع نتائج ونسوي كذا. However we need to be aware ان في limitation. So لما باكر عندكم انتم تسوون project في discussion section, when you discuss the results of your paper or your project, you have to acknowledge that عندنا limitation, we did not reach this, we were not able to measure this, عندنا types of bias راح نتكلم عنها كذا كذا. So you always have to highlight them when you write a paper. حتى أنا when I review a paper حتى if it's good, إذا الauthor ما يتكلم أو investigator ما يتكلم عن limitations, because there is no perfect studies at all, does not exist. That's why تشوفون دراسة تقول شيء بعدين تطلع دراسة ثانية تقول العكس. ليش؟ لأن في مشاكل هنا، يعني في limitations قاعد تصير. So that's a yes.
عندي سؤال، مثلا إذا سويت البحث وحطيت limitation مثلا، اللجنة اللي راح تقرر على نشر هذا البحث ما راح يعني يريدون يشوف إنه وايد في limitation.
إذا كان في وايد limitation yes you get rejected. Yes يعني which is very normal. يعني yeah أنا توني الحين دزيت paper بس for a very good journal. إنزين I was rejected. However the rejection مالي was on solid basis لأن في أغلاط أنا سويتها وهم صادوها. So now I'm repeating the analysis, change, I fix the results again, and then I resubmit the paper. So this is very important. This is our community, okay? And actually it's good sometimes to get rejected because you can learn a lot. لأن بعدين لما تسوي new studies you always put هذا rejection ما تنسينه. and you always doesn't know why you get rejected. It's like you are failing, yani. However, it sticks in your mind, and then you avoid it on the next, and then you start to improve because you are starting to avoid those mistakes. Okay. Anyway, worldwide, richer cities have higher rates of coronary heart disease than poorer cities. Okay. It would be incorrect to infer that richer individuals have higher rate of coronary heart disease than poorer individuals, because richer ones have health care. So اللي يصير هني عندهم access to health care. Okay. So احنا نقول okay, richer nations have more heart disease prominent because of يعني عندهم access to food, they have this comfy lifestyle, they don't work manual labor. However, it does not means in the individual level this notion is correct. So that's the example اللي عن ecological fallacy. In fact, industrialized cities, poorer people have higher coronary heart disease than richer ones. Okay, because also exposure to, especially in industry, اللي هي industrial city, نفس اللي بچاينا المصانع، عندهم هنيك factory في pollution, they are poorer في stress, they work longer hours, exhaustion. Okay. So that's where you can see when you go into individual, you go into that can be problematic. So you are ignoring individual groups that have certain characteristics which can nullify the notion. How do we represent or summarize ecological data? دائما نسوي plot like this, and you can see شنو unit of analysis here. Huh? شنو unit of analysis? Huh? Other question, other unit of analysis. That's gonna come to الامتحان.
Countries.
Huh?
Countries.
Countries. Yeah. ما تشوفوا شنو سويسرلاند، شنو بوتسوانا، Gambia, Niger, Somalia. Those are country level. So that's my unit of analysis. The unit of analysis is your records, okay, which is your patients or your subjects. So that's your unit of analysis. So in summary, عندنا advantages: may provide information about the context of health, can be performed when individual level measurements are not available, can be conducted rapidly and with minimal resources. يعني ممكن تروحون على الأونلاين, and you can go for the WHO or تروحون حق CDC websites, and you can collect and you can start doing some part of analysis. Disadvantage: ecological fallacy. That's a very important thing. Imprecise measurement of exposure, because you are measuring exposure at a group level, not within individual. فتذكروا مثال الكوروناري هارت ديزيز اللي اعطيتكم اياه. اوكي، ممكن يكون حتى اشياء ثانيه بعد عن الفكره هذه. Now عندنا case control studies. شنو هني النقطه؟ هني راح ندش على individual level. Subjects are defined on the basis of presence or absence of an outcome of interest. Okay, so أنا cases اسمها case. So basically فيهم الديزيز. وانا جروب ثاني ما فيهم الديزيز عشان I can compare. Okay, I can compare شنو؟ أنا already الهم مالي مو الديزيز، أنا يعني that's the most important distinction. أنا في الكيس كنترول أنا already عندي جمعت الديزيز individual. My notion here is that I want to see the exposure. When I identify the exposure that caused the disease, how can I quantify this? I quantify through case control. So, exposure is my ultimate outcome when I do case control. Okay? Now, إذا كان exposure rare يعني قليل, الcase control تكون مو powerful. You cannot establish association. So again, that's the part of case control. So, عندنا هني a very simple design of case control. And then at past time, start with two similar group of people. One cases has the disease, another does not have. Study question: did past exposure differ between cases and control? Very simple design. أنا يجمع ناس فيهم الديزيز وفيهم ما في الديزيز. بعدين شنو اروح افحصهم ولا اسالهم سؤال. عندي كويشنير مثلا او عندي ريجستري، ارجع حق الريجستري اشوف والله هذا was discharged because he's a smoker when he was طبعا هناك في مثلا عندنا كورونا. انا الحين قاعد اشتغل مو كيس كنترول، it's more like cross sectional. However we can do something similar. So انا الحين عندي access to a registry مالت coronary heart disease. الاوتكم اوف انترست مالي ان عندي ناس discharged dead يعني كانوا لما طلعوا من المستشفى ميتين ولا احياء. فهذا الحين اوتكم مالي، الاوتكم مالي ان they get dead والكوز اوف ديث از coronary heart disease. فشو اسوي؟ ارجع من الباست واشوف شنو الكاركترستيك مالتهم. مثلا في واحد he's a heavy smoker so that's why he did not survive a heart attack. في واحد مثلا عنده diabetes so that's an exposure. عنده diabetes اثر على خلاه ديث. فمرات يكون الايج، مرات يكون السكس، مرات يكون كذا كاركترستيك. فانا I measure multiple exposure and then I see whether الجروب اللي فيها disease ان الاكسبوجر هذا في معاهم high association. وهذا هني when I say the odds ratio. That's the most important use of the odds ratio. Okay, in the odds ratio, in people who got exposed, the odds of people getting disease when they get exposed to a certain exposure is X time more than the group, okay, who did not get the disease and got the same exposure. Again, the odds ratio will be interpreted in a way in the شنو؟ in the people who have the disease and people who got exposed to that exposure have X time, خلينا نقول 20 times more odds of having the disease when compared to the group that did not get exposed to that exposure. So هذه هي odds ratio. إذا رجعتوا حتى تعريف odds ratio, this is how you think. And then when we think about case control, we think about odds ratio because we want to see the odds of exposure, how the exposure increases your odds of getting the disease. Now عندنا شيء يسمونه matched case control study is one in which the case and control have been matched according to more criteria. شنو؟ Yes.
عندي سؤال. الكيس كنترول لازم يكون بين people who have the disease or people who don't have the disease.
Yes.
يعني for example people who are dead from coronary heart disease, people who are alive but يعني aren't dead, we can't consider it a case control.
No, so in this case احنا for example for that we have two people ممكن يعني في الكيس كنترول لازم يكونون نفس الاوتكم. شلون؟ which is a good question. ان الحين في الكيس كنترول انا I get people dead from coronary heart disease او exposure risk factor. وفي people who got dead from other causes. هذول اقدر استخدم كنترول. So شنو هني عندنا هني هذا في ناحية الديث ممكن أنا أسوي شيء. So that's control selection. في types. Now في type ثاني إن one group cases has the disease which is and the other does not have the disease, but that they get the same exposure. Okay. So that's يعني هذا نفس الشيء يعني you can have disease have no disease but then they got exposed. ونفس الشيء both of them can be dead, but they have the same يعني ما كان في coronary heart disease, however they got the same exposure. Okay. So it's it's all about comparability. انت بالنهايه مو مهم هم they got disease or they got disease. انت بالنهايه تبي تعرفين الاكسبوجر هل هو كان السبب اللي خلى الكيسز are cases. هذا الموست important part of case control. شو اللي خلاهم يصيرون cases. That's the most important. Pardon? بالضبط. اساس انه بعدين شنو we try. Now again دير بالك case control it's an association, it's not causation. Okay, so with case control again it's an association. However, and when we go this ممكن هم نقول however also insufficient cause. لما احنا we identify exposure ممكن كم نسميه insufficient cause يعني cause ممكن يكون سبب لكن من عدة أسباب. Okay, only in experimental studies اللي هو clinical trial we can infer direct causation. Okay, so don't miss the important point هذه. Matching we can match. يعني ممكن I match people control على الage على الريشيو على هذا. however الماتشنج it's you will hear a lot about it يعني في الكيس كنترول. however الماتشنج راح نتكلم عنه اكثر يعني I will save it for a later lecture. I will talk more detail شنو المشاكل اللي تصير في الماتشنج. اوكي however هني matching aids in control confounding هذا الستيتمنت موجوده في الكتاب. however الكتاب الثاني الصغير it says otherwise, so that's where we're going to discuss this later because I love this discussion. now يعني يقول لك اذا كان السكس is a confounder لما انا I match case and control on مثلا sex راح يكون انا I eliminated the effect of that confounder. اوكي انك انت لما you match people على شغله ما تحاتي انها ممكن تخرب الاسوسيشن. اوكي however هذه فيها مشكله so I'm gonna save it for the last lecture. okay the odds ratio is the measurement of association between frequency of exposure and frequency of the outcome using case control. see the next slide. طبعا هني اتوقع ان هذا المفروض يكون سؤال سهل بالامتحان صح؟ الodds ratio المفروض يكون straight forward. what is the correct calculation حق هذا فيعني المفروض واحد يحله وهم ضمه. so هني shown in the tenfold عارفين احنا already the odds in the favor of exposure among disease group are the cases, the odds of favor of exposure among non-disease group are controls. ونفس الطريقة تشوفون هني already we did now. now what's the most important part? if the observed ratio is not due to chance is statistically significant then the odds ratio is greater than 1 suggests positive association. An odds ratio of 2.1 suggests that the odds of disease are about 2 times higher among the exposed than among the non-exposed group. So هذا الcorrect. so يحيي سؤال امتحان what is the odds ratio حسبتوها? which one is the correct interpretation of that odds ratio? okay so هذا المفروض يكون سؤال سهل. odds ratio of 1 indicates no association. now indicates no association لا ننسى بعد odds ratio less than 1 indicates that exposure might be a protective factor. okay
Sure.
protective factor يعني شنو الاكسبوجر بدال لانه يسبب الديزيز it prevents the disease. فلما تصير اقل من 1 نفس الفاكسينيشن so the odds of you getting influenza will be 10 times less likely when you vaccinate than the people who don't vaccinate who would like to get sick and suffer and infect other people. شنو الادفانتج طبعا على فكره ترى by the way one of the common question راح يكون بالامتحان advantages and disadvantages of studies. okay so that should be a very important part من الامتحان تكونون حاطينه in consideration. can be used to show to study low prevalence condition having diseases يعني لما يكون diseases rare and then however exposure is more prevalent then it's good for this kind of father. quickly and easy to complete لان انتم شنو انتم تجمعون you select case and control وبعدين تسوي لهم questionnaire هذول الكيسز والكنترول or you can go into their medical records so it's much easier. usually inexpensive involves smaller number of subjects. disadvantage measurement of exposure may be inaccurate. exposure شلون؟ يعني مثلا مثال حق case control خلينا نقول واحد انت الحين عندك people mothers اللي cases يكون ان المذرز okay ان المذرز got when they got pregnant they got a disfigured or like a child with disability يعني inherent disability وفي mothers الكنترول مالوتي who got a healthy child. however لما نسوي لهم questionnaire منو تتوقعون اللي ممكن تتذكر اكثر او تجاوب الكويشنير صح؟ اللي ولدت واحد في مشاكل فدائما تحاتي فتجاوب عشان however اللي ولدها ما في شيء وهذا ما راح تتذكر whether she was exposed or not. so هذا مثال يسمونه recall bias راح نتكلم عنه بالمحاضرات الجايه. representative case and control may be unknown. so انت حتى even when you chose هذا tricky part of ان الcases and controls okay انت شفت في association between exposure and disease however انت you selected cases and control and you don't know if they truly represents the total population صح ولا لا؟ لان في methods for selecting الكيس كنترول وفي representative. طبعا احنا ما راح ندش في الديتيلز مال كيس كنترول لان we will save it for سنه ثالثه. هناك راح يكون في however الدiscussion راح نسويها في البراكتيكمز will give you idea about the selection process يعني different لان في تقريبا 10 types of control selection case selection. فبالتالي هذا ليش يقول لك انه does not represent because انت you want to achieve the most comparable you know part. لان ما نبي ان تتوكل سنه ثانيه if I go through this وايرات راح تطق I know. yeah it's not straightforward. فراح ناخذ فاحنا قررنا انا السنه اللي طافت درستهم اياه فمساكين يعني they suffer. فاحنا قررنا احنا we save this في سنه ثالثه لما تكونون more involved. Okay? And then provide indirect estimate of risk. So it provides indirect estimate of risk معناته odds ratio. ان odds ratio is not risk. It's not like relative risk. You see? So or it's not يعني يسمونها real risk. فبالتالي odds ratio is indirect تعتبر estimate of risk. temporal relation between exposure and factor and outcome cannot always be ascertained. يعني temporal شنو اللي هو الوقت الزمني ما بين الاكسبوجر والاوتكم والديزيز also cannot be really ascertained يعني ما تقدرين تثبتينه. اوكي في ناس راح يكون وايد الباست اكسبوجر مالهم بعيد وفي ناس راح يكونون في الكيس كنترول لا توه. ف it's very hard sometimes you calibrate. ما يدري انت يعني ابسط شيء هل معقوله rationally ان كلهم they got exposed on the same time؟ no صح ولا لا؟ في ناس بعد تصير في ناس بعد. so هذا يعني اختصار هذا معنات ال disadvantages. again راح هي عنهم question. في سؤال قبل لا اروح؟ اوكي now نتكلم عن cohort study. now cohort study very simple concept. انا اجيب ناس smoker non smokers معناته شنو already هم they are having exposure. انا I define exposure. I follow them over time. في ناس they will get lung cancer في ناس will not get lung cancer. now تشوفون هني causation is more strong. يعني انا هني however still is insufficient لانه اوكي انا عندي smoker non smoker however في ناس عندهم genetics for cancer في ناس don't have genetics. فبالتالي even though they got the disease still it's not enough. اوكي انا يدي توفى عمره 90 بدا يدخن سحيق سجاير من عمره 15 سنه مع 10 سنين and he might at 90 which is a good age for two يعني when people die at 90 or 85 that's normal. Okay? A cohort is defined as a population group or subset of distinguished by a common characteristic اللي هو exposure. أنا الحين هناك disease case control. هنا أنا identify exposure. That followed over a period of time. Examples: birth or age cohort, work cohort, school educational cohort اللي هم في ناس birth cohort the people enrolled or they get exposed to certain time and then when they grow they might have difficulties in their growth. School work cohort ناس توظفوا اتابعهم into cohort. I'm following you over time, evaluating you, teaching you. احنا نسميهم cohort. انتوا الحين السكند cohort وفي بعدكم الثيرد cohort. الفيرست cohort اللي هم الخمسه. اوكي فانتوا cohorts تعتبرون. هذه هي school cohorts. Because انتوا you start all together exposed and non-exposed to المواد اللي قاعد نأذيكم فيها. And then we see your evolution, which is on the end the outcome شنو? When you become a public health practitioner. زين. Some people يعني choose, some people that. فيعني that's part of the idea of a cohort. And there are two major categories of cohorts, and then a population-based, leverages information from the total population and or a sample of the population. And then exposure rate compared cohorts with or without different exposure. So, and then two types. And then أول شيء population-based, هو common type. Or population-based again we collect information either from the total population, which is hard, or a sample of the population. يعني أنا عندي إحنا مثلا خلينا نقول مثال شنو الكويت، إحنا كلنا قاعد نشم الهواء الملوث. So I start to see people developing asthma, for example. Okay, asthma prevalence is high. ممكن أسويها all population of Kuwait, which is difficult. We cannot do that on the level. So I take a sample from multiple group, and then I know that إنهم they are getting يعني they are breathing, and then we see the prevalence of asthma, or that they develop asthma or not. يعني مثلا أيام مع ناس ما فيهم asthma توهم. Okay, وفي certain stage of your life you start to develop asthma. Okay, so أيامهم I select them and then I follow them over time. واشوف شنو the prevalence of asthma in their stats. And then exposure based compares cohort with and without different exposures. So مثل شنو؟ احنا نعرف الكانسر لا وايد it's a multifactorial صح؟ فأنا شلون إذا أنا أبي أحدد الماgnitude of different causes. أول شيء مثلا أشوف الجينيتكس زين وأتابعهم وأشوف they develop cancer not. بعدين أشوف مثلا diet، بعدين أشوف الإكسرسايز وأقارن، وكل واحدة راح أحسب منها relative risk وأشوف which exposure within different cohort that actually have the highest relative risk. So I'm comparing exposure individual. So I have multiple cohorts وكل cohort قاعد تركز على exposure معين بعدين أقارن magnitude of that. فهذا يسمونه exposure based. Now again ترى by the way أنا لما حاط شوية because this is what I want you to understand. يعني ما أبي زيادة، ما أبي تروحون زيادة. Okay؟ والquestion راح يكون على هالليفل ما راح يكون more. Prospective cohort study عندنا هني prospective retrospective. أنا ممكن أنا بالنهاية بدايتي شنو الستارتنج بوينت مالتي؟ exposure. Phase control starting point مالتي disease. فبالتالي exposure بعدين either I go back في registry will see whether they developed a disease or not, or I can go prospectively أتابعهم over time. And then now the problem is again تشوفون ترى سالفة المتابعة is very expensive. لما أنت عندك ناس تتابعهم over time, this is very expensive. So the prospective is more expensive than a retrospective. Retrospective already everything مسجل موجودة في registry. This is one of the things هذا. And then a historical prospective cohort, you can historical prospective, and then you go two direction. You can go retrospectively and prospectively. Okay. مثلا أنا ممكن عندي certain exposure. شلون مثلا أعطيكم مثال. Very easy, which should stick with you in your mind. أنا عندي exposure coronary heart disease. Sorry, disease مالي coronary heart disease. وعندي خلينا نقول exposure smoking. أنا ممكن أحط patient الحين لما تسمعون ناس يحوشه heart attack بس he survives. وفي ناس يحوشهم جلطة and they survive. So أقدر أرجع أشوف history ماله. Did he have stroke or heart attack? And then he's a smoker and then أتابع مرة ثانية أشوف إذا he develops it again. You see, so this is where I need to go, but because ممكن some people they develop stroke مرة واحدة and then they don't get it again. But some people because they smoke in a different way or they have genetics, if they develop the second stroke, they could die. So that's why I need to go backward and forward. Okay, so that's why, and as you see, this is also more complex. يعني الديزاين هذا وايد غالي وcomplex. يعني تروح back and forth. It's very hard. Subjects are classified according to their exposure to a factor of interest and then are observed over time. So تكلمنا عنه هني. Time passes. And the baseline healthy people who have an exposure, they do not develop, and then over time I'll follow them how many cases who develop a disease خلاص بس هذا أنا أسجله وأشيله بعدين أكمل المتابعة. يعني ممكن في ناس أول سنة يسوون الديزيز، في ناس بعد سنتين. فأنا شنو أنا أحدد موعد لها 10 سنين مثلا. في ناس أول سنة، في ناس ثاني سنة، في ناس رابع سنة. لما تنتهي الفترة ل10 سنين خلاص أوقفها كلها. ففي ناس تشوفهم راح they do not develop وفي ناس they already develop وانتهى الموضوع. Retrospective cohort study makes use of historical data to examine exposure. طبعا again قلنا هذا. For association between the baseline and the present is performed. Example study of mortality among an occupational cohort of shipyard workers employed at a specific naval yard during a defined interval of time in the past. نشوف شنو mortality مالتهم. Okay, and ونرجع بالتالي back on the time and you see احنا في الشipyard هني شنو صار؟ Study of mortality. Now this is a question. This is how you read the question. There is a study. And mortality is the outcome. Okay? Mortality is the outcome. أول ما تسمعون كلمة mortality study إن الأوتكم مالي راح أحطه
Mortality.
It's a mortality. Among occupational cohorts. So a type of cohort is an occupational cohort. يعني people who are working on a workplace. Of shipyard workers. السبجكتس مالوتي شنو؟ Shipyard workers. Employed at a specific naval yard. شنو الexposure?
Being employed at a
Being
specific
in that naval yard. During a defined interval of time in the past. So is it prospective or retrospective?
Retrospective.
Retrospective, exactly. You see, this is راح يجي question, راح يجي سؤال شنو unit of observation؟ شنو مدى شنو كذا كذا. You need to تفصفصين السؤال and then you need to identify the components. The nice thing إن إحنا الexercise اللي راح نسويه when we critique real studies we will get exposed to more. شلون نفصفص الدراسات. أعطيتكم أنا الجايد وأعطيتكم الدراسة مالت الأسبوع اللي هي باكر. I'm just wondering, Noor, is this هالكلاس روم راح تكون empty الساعة 8؟ باكر. Check. If not, يعني ما أدري. بس أخاف الساعة 9 يكون في محاضرة لأن هي ساعتين. Okay. وقلنا combined retrospective وهذا. Now شنو اللي نحسبه من الكوهورت؟ الريسك ريشيو. Okay. Sorry, the relative risk. اللي هو ratio of incidence rate of the disease or the health outcome in the exposed group to the incidence rate of the disease or the condition on the non-exposed group. So هذه يسمونها relative risk. And you can see here, that's a direct measure of risk. Okay. نفس الجدول أعطيناكم إياه. You have to know how to do the calculation. Incidence of disease in the exposed group A over A plus B. Incidence disease of the non-exposed هذا بعدين نقسمهم تعطينا relative risk. Okay. Now عندنا شغلة يسمونها we can also so احنا الحين عارفين الريسك relative risk. عارفين فكرة. عارفين شلون نحسبها. Okay. Well, by the way, ترى relative risk again, it's نفس طريقة odds ratio 1 because it's a ratio. So it's greater than 1, less than 1 protective, نفس الconcept. في شيء يسمونه attributable risk. وهذا major advantage of a cohort. شنو attributable risk? In a cohort study refers to the difference between incidence rate of disease in the exposed group and the incidence rate of disease in the non-exposed group. From previous calculation نقدر نحسب انزين instead ما نقسمهم اوكي بدل لا نقسم هني هذه راح نطرحهم اوكي. So incidence in the total population minus incidence in the non-exposed segment. Okay. Calculation example, suppose that annual lung cancer among men in population is 79.4 per 100,000. Annual lung cancer incidence among non-smoker men is 28 per 1,000 per 100,000. So أنا عندي هني exposed, okay, and non-exposed, smoking. Population differences نطرحهم من بعض. So difference في الريسك. A difference per risk between men who smoke and who don't smoke is 51.4 per year. Now we can only do this in a cohort. We can't do this in a case control. Okay, راح يجي tricky question. بحط لك case control ومرتاح وما شلون اقول لك تحس في هذا relative risk size. So I'm gonna mix and match so that you have to be careful in that sense.
دكتور ليش ما اقدر اسوي بال
Now, sorry, أرد. Now, the advantage of the risk difference is that you can attribute. It's called attributable risk difference. And I can attribute as a, so that's even strong causation inference. يعني because the ratio is not as good, is not as strong as a difference. The difference is more powerful. Okay? So attributable معناته I can attribute the cancer to the smoking status. However, for ratio, it's a measure of association. More like it's highly associated. Risk ratio, لما حتى أحسبها, it's like highly associated. However, the typical risk, no, actually I can say attribute that risk of that exposure to that group. So that's why cohorts are more powerful than case control in terms of estimating risk. شنو سؤالك كان؟
دكتور عادي لا ما هذا سؤال هذا ما فهمت.
Yeah. So السؤال صباح الخير. So احنا قلنا ان هذا الاكزامبل اوكي عندنا هني attributable risk ونفس الشيء هني نفس تقريبا نفس فكره السؤال اوكي هني عندنا population risk difference. So attributable risk هني what I'm doing إن شنو إن أنا قاعد عندي نسبة حسبتها من people of incidence of lung cancer وعندي ناس annual lung cancer incidence among non-smoking. لاحظوا إن هني total population annual lung cancer incidence among men. However, هذا الانسيدنس does not mean ان هذول كل من كانوا smokers. اوكي؟ عندي lung cancer. اوكي؟ وعندي cohort حسبتها non smoker men who had lung cancer. اوكي؟ Now انا بعرف من هذول اللي total lung cancer شنو الريسك شنو attributable risk to smoking. فهذه ال 51.4 per 100,000 men it's the attributable risk to smoking. لاحظوا انتم هني كل الناس اللي عندهم lung cancer اللي تحت اللي ما عند اللي they are non-smokers but they have lung cancer 28. لما اطرح 79.4 منها 28 يطلع كم 52. هذه الكمية it's the risk of smoking among the risk of lung cancer among smokers. So I'm attributing the smoking status, I'm giving it in that way, it's a very important cause or attributed to the majority of lung cancers عندي. Okay? هذا الطرح the ability اني اطرح why attribute I cannot do it for cost control. I can only do it for cohort. وهذا الانفرنس is more powerful than a risk ratio. A ratio again قلنا هي it's a measure of association. However, a difference attributable or attributable risk, no, it's not an association. It's actually referring toward causation. Referring toward causation. But it's not a measure of causation. يعني شنو معناته I can say إن smoking is a cause but it's not sufficient cause. هذه فكرتي لما أقرأ مو شرط. However, it's a cause. But it's not sufficient cause. Okay? I can only say that when I use attributable risk. I cannot say that from relative risk or odds ratio. Okay? Odds ratio and relative risk are measures of association. واضحة الفكرة؟ Again, هذا طبعا a very important summary of the advantages and disadvantages. هذا السؤال راح يواجه بالامتحان. Permit direct observation of risk. هذا attributable risk is permitting a direct observation of risk. Exposure factor is well defined. ما فيها روح وتعال. Can study exposure that are uncommon in the can study exposure that are uncommon. يعني uncommon معناته إذا كان exposure rare. It's very good. Now, when for case control, when the exposure is rare, we could do it's not good. Now for ILX, a disease إذا كان rare, الcohort is not good. لأن إحنا بالنهاية نبي people develop a disease. إذا أنا يجمعك 10,000 وخمسة they develop a disease شو الفايدة؟ ما I cannot infer صح ولا؟ بالكيس كنترول أنا عندي الناس الديزيز بس exposure is rare. يمكن 6 أنا من 500 6 أو 7 they got exposed. Why would I do case control عيال؟ You see the idea هني؟ Can study exposure uncommon عندنا هي temporal relationship between factor and outcome is known. لاحظوا incidence فيها temporal component. We cannot have temporal components in case controls or cross sectional. Temporality, so in cause and effect, it always لما نقول لك سبب ومسبب ما يصير سبب ومسبب بدون time. There has to be time. يعني حتى الله سبحانه وتعالى لما خلق في 7 أيام صح ولا لا؟ ما في شيء check back يصير. يعني دائما there is a time to cause something. Expensive and time consuming. Oh, it's really expensive. يعني إذا بتسوين cohort يعني مو أقل البادجت ما تصير أقل من نص مليون دينار. Okay, it's really expensive to follow people, record their هذا diagnostics الأمور هذه كلها, operations, salaries, people employed to follow up. It's very expensive. Yes.
كم راح يوفر لنا؟
You can المفروض يعني unfortunately you know لما يعني الصحة وزارات بالعالم المحترمة نص البادجت مالتها حق doing this. يعني مثلا السعودية وزارة الصحة عندهم بادجت كاملة مليارات يعني حتى they call me to write a proposal to do things like this cohort case controls وكذي. احنا لا احنا الوزارة كلها علاج بالخارج. فالمفروض إذا consider علاج بالخارج then we should be have some money for doing those studies. KFS هو الوحيد اللي يمول. هم also KFS budget is limited. Kuwait Foundation for the Advancement of Science. So that's why I'm telling you in that for people when they study epidemiology and then they have the hope and then they come back and do cohort, I feel sad for them. You know, it's still not possible. There are many factors, and I'm just giving you the realistic picture of today. Okay, and that's why I'm more interested into advanced mathematical methods that deals with data. لأن الحين هي the future. لأن حتى الحين case controls وهذول على حتى مستوى العالم لازم نسويهم. however الحين في أشياء طلعت very more powerful than case control and cohorts. يعني personalized medicine يعني epidemiology is changing. هذه كانت موجودة هذه حتى الكوهورتس فيها مشاكل وايد يعني. تشوفون هذا السبب تشوفون في دراسة تقول كذي وفي دراسة تقول كذي وفي دراسة تقول كذي وفي دراسة تقول كذي وفي دراسة تقول كذي وبعدين دراسة تلغي دراسة. One of the most important issues with cohort تروح تشوفوا عندنا دراسة أتوقع فيها 30,000. مشكلة 30,000 لما احنا قلنا في الستاتستكس السامبل سايز لما تزيد everything becomes statistically significant. Sometimes when you use classical statistical methods on cohort data, you will have issues with estimating false association and risks. So that's why now the people are using different, more advanced, يعني مثل machine learning والأمور هذه كلها على cohorts, reanalyzing the cohort data again and again because they can see إن ما في association. طبعا again this is a very advanced subject. However, it's يعني it's not the end of the world. You can always do something else in epidemiology. That's the nice thing is that تشوفون it's a very broad subject. أنت مو محكورة corner واحد يعني. In epidemiology, experimental studies are implemented as intervention studies. Initial intervention studies Investigation involving intentional change in some aspect of the study, randomized clinical trial, quasi-experiment. The most important intervention study is vaccination. Okay. شنو الافكت اوف فاكسينيشن on individuals الامور هذه كلها. وعندنا also RCTs اللي randomized clinical trials and they do it to cure certain type of a disease or a certain type of phenomena. Okay. عندنا احنا هني one of the most intervention studies. We hope احنا I'm very happy مثلا ان اغلب يعني الكل are women in our public health. I think women in public health they do much better than men. So one of the part we can do an intervention study about مثلا human papilloma virus or the cervical cancer, and then we can try to implement ونشوف شلون الvaccination لما ينتشر وقلل cervical cancer. So that's one of the examples. Clinical trial عندنا it's a research activity that involves the administration of a test regimen to humans to evaluate their efficacy and safety. Application عندنا prophylactic trial to prevent. Prophylactic شنو معناته؟ prevention. نفس vaccination. Okay. Therapeutic تعالج. Okay. So عندنا two types of trials. Randomized controlled trials. Clinical epidemiological experiment in which subjects are randomly allocated to groups, usually called test and control groups, to receive or not to receive the disease. Very easy. Cross-sectional design, participants may be switched between treatments. طبعا هذا very easy. إن شنو أنا عندي two treatments أبي أقارن بينهم. في الجروب الأولى أعطيها treatment A والجروب الثاني أعطيها B بعدين I switch. So I need to. That's a crossover. يعني it's a very easy design. It's not. لاحظوا إن ترى clinical trials are a bit easier. يعني أنت you have the control, which makes sense. However تشوفون في أشياء شوية tricky في الكيس كنترول. خصوصا الكوهورت تحسونها شوية معقدة صح؟ Into how you go back and forth and how to measure. You can see هني بس هني it's like so straightforward. They receive, they don't receive, they receive that, they don't receive that. You follow them. They got treated, they don't get treated. عندنا study sample, rigorous inclusion and exclusion criteria. طبعا أنا لازم الناس اللي أحطهم في كاتيجوري يكونون genetic profile مالهم متشابه. ما يصير هندي ويب بعدين ياباني ويب ما أدري شنو حط ناس. They have to be same group, same ethnicity, مثلا. Okay. فيعني you have a very important inclusion and exclusion. أنا أجمع ناس خلينا نقول أنا عندي record of 5,000 patient. أنقي منهم 50 أنقي منهم من 5,000 مرات أنقي بس 100. Okay.
بس دكتور ممكن يصير selection bias بعدين إنه I'm choosing who I want.
في ممكن تصير مشاكل صح. We'll talk about this later. Yes. بس أهم شيء إحنا بالنهاية لما نسوي control group و treatment group إنه لازم يكونون comparable في clinical trial. So that's why you have to put a very rigorous selection criteria عشان يعني تعرفون الدواء ما يشتغل مع الكل بنفس الطريقة. صح ولا؟ that's why it's very important. طبعا again في السنة الثالثة راح تاخذون evidence based practice. هناك راح تدشون deeper بأنواع الكلينيكال ترايل والأمور هذه كلها. الحين إحنا I thought إنه حسيت إنه هي already المادة ثقيلة ف I should be saving it more later on حق هذا. A community intervention trial is intervention designed for purpose of education or behavior changes. طبعا ترى مو شرط يكون intervention عن طريق vaccination. في behaviors you need to change. عادات معينة أو معينة. Okay, you need to change. فبالتالي يعني it's add into with your هذا. شنو ممكن إحنا في عندنا واحدة من البراكتسز اللي سيئة جدا that almost killed me many times لما واحدة تمسك التليفون وهي تسوقي. This is so dangerous. Okay, and that causes injury, accidents if she's not affected هذا. فبالتالي يعني that's a behavior and should be intervention. How intervention توعية وهم رجال المرور يصيرون أكثر صلامة من هالناحية لأن it's really bad. شنو quasi experiments؟ اللي هي is type of research in which investigator manipulate the study factor but does not assign individual randomly to the exposed and non-exposed. So هني quasi experiment manipulates the study factor but does not assign groups subject randomly to exposed and non-exposed group.
يعني they
Okay.
select them يعني they
يس اوكي ما مو مهم انا بس حاطه يعني if you are يعني interested this type of study بس to be honest with you I'm not going to ask a question about الامتحان. It's not very important. So don't bug yourself with it. You can even remove that slide. It's type أهم شيء إنه it's a type of experimental study. That's it. A community intervention ولا تبوني يعني أشرحها بالتفصيل وين منها يصير. Okay, a community intervention. Community trial is an intervention designed for purpose of education. هذا خلينا already. أنا قاعد أرجع ورا. Program evaluation is used to know whether a program meets standard goal and justified economically. الماس vaccination أنا سويت campaign هل قللت التعرض حق الانفلونزا شنو السبسيكونت. So دائما أنا لما أسوي intervention I always have to monitor it and evaluate it over time because the intervention مرات يكون very expensive. اوكي ما عندي مشكله خليه يكون expensive بس هل قاعد يوفر علي ناس يطيحون مرضى لان اذا في ناس they got sick وعالجتهم هذا more expensive than preventing it. و that's your important point. احنا نبي نقلل العبء. Unfortunately I don't see ان العبء قاعد يقل. للحين قاعد يفتحون وايد عيادات مستشفيات. It worries me ان كل شوي يفتحون مستشفى يفتحون ما ادري شنو يفتحون. It's like they are telling people come get sick and come to me. It's not healthy اللي قاعد يصير. فاحنا we hope until you change this. This is going to be your biggest challenge by the way. Now آخر شيء بس نبي نتكلم عنه and then I'm going to give you a break and then we're going to come back for a Socrative torture part of the lecture. عندنا أول شيء لما نفكر في الستدي راح يكون عندنا شنو external validity. So external validity هل ال results مالتي can be applied to the general population. يعني مثلا لما يجي لك دكاتره ابسط شيء انتم هذا الحين لازم تشوفونها الدكاتره الفاشينيستا. في دراسه تشوفون يقول لك هذا في افكت وين شنو؟ تلقين الدراسه مسوينها بامريكا. شلون تشتغل عندنا؟ ما تشتغل عندنا. لازم تعطيني دراسه اشتغلت عندنا نفس الشيء فيها الدواء تشوفين. فبالتالي يعني which shows you يعني طبعا انتم دير بالكم اذا رديتوا عليهم راح يسوي لكم بلوك. very common يعني. وبس مو بس ترى بلوك في السوشيال ميديا حتى in reality into if you show them in it's very you have to be very political لما you talk with them. They have so much ego يعني. Sampling error الديزاين مال السامبلينج يكون فيه مشكلة. Internal validity داخل الدراسة مرات يكون فيها limitations نفسها وبايس. External validity ability to generalize the result of the study to the general population. Convenient sampling ان انا ما اسوي ديزاين ولا في randomness. هذه فيها مشكله ان انا am biased with a certain group. احنا already نفهم الكونسبت. Random sampling are likely to demonstrate external validity than others. So external validity اول issue فيها اللي هي sampling فنربطهم مع بعض. لما يصير في sampling error معناته راح تاثر على external validity. Again, sampling, احنا ليش نسوي sampling؟ عشان to get a representative sample to the population, which links to the concept of the external validity. I think إن قثيتكم وايد بهالأمور. Now هنا عندنا هذا المفروض لحظة. Okay, عندنا الانترنال validity آخر شيء refers to the degree to which the study has used a methodologically sound procedure. هذا الحين next 3 practicum راح نتكلم عن internal validity which is the most important part اللي هو الفاندمنتال. راح يكون الصورة راح تكون وايد أوضح starting tomorrow cohort صح؟ شنو باكر is it a case control ولا cohort؟ Now how to evaluate internal validity عندنا tool يسمونها checklist. حق الكوهورت بالكيس كنترول we use criteria يسمونها STROB which is strengthening the reporting of observation study in epidemiology. وعندنا consolidated standard of reporting for clinical trials, randomized clinical trials. Okay, so عشان نعرف شلون احنا نقيم الدراسة case control نبتدي بالأسهل. We use the checklist هذه. خذيناها هذه صح. فانت هني it's the same thing مو بس مع الدايجنوستيك تيست، حتى مع الدراسه. is it reliable؟ is it valid؟ يعني هل عالجت المشكله؟ هل وصلت لها؟ مرات تكون نفس الكونسبت. so it's always put yourself into this position when you evaluate whether it's a diagnostic test ولا a case control ولا هذا من ناحيه الاكسترنال والانترنال.